Okay, I'm just going to hit a few highlights here from Chapter 12 that talks about some of the action things that Congress is a part of and all that they are doing. We're going to begin with their organization, specifically from day one when they come in and begin a new session of Congress. And so we're going to see that early on in January every other year. And so opening day procedures in the House of Representatives does look different from the Senate, and so begins with the clerk. He is the one who is going to preside over all of these opening day procedures. The clerk is going to be the one to organize and preside over everything that's going on because the speaker hasn't officially taken on his role yet or her role at that point. They begin with a roll call, checking attendance of all 435 new members of the House. Even those that have been reelected are often considered to be new members on this particular roll call. And they will then vote for a Speaker of the House. Many times this has already, to some extent, been determined and been talked about, but they will take the official role and the official vote here for the new Speaker. And the Speaker of the House then becomes the regular presiding officer over major events that are happening here. And it has always traditionally been a member from the majority party. Not required, but that is something that has always happened. And again, it does not have to be somebody from within that body either. So the Speaker of the House is the first one to take the oath of office, and the Dean of the House is the one who will administer that oath of office. I'm not concerned that you know about the Dean of the House, but that's the person that will swear in the Speaker. And then the rest of the members will then be sworn in by the Speaker of the House once he has taken his oath. As far as the seating goes, the Democrats sit on the right, the Republicans sit on the left, and that is from the Speaker's viewpoint looking out toward the audience there. That's how they will sit. Then they will begin to elect minor officers. And I just mentioned a few of these that are on here. We have a clerk, a sergeant at arms. Now, the job of the sergeant at arms is to help maintain order within and procedure within the body of the House. This is also the person that will go out and pull members into the House if they need additional people uh, to to get a quorum in order to have enough members to vote. He will also be the one when we get to the State of the Union address. The Sergeant at Arms is always the one who announces the President of the United States, and so that's his one big night where he gets to be seen by everybody. But otherwise, he's usually in the back scenes and not very visible to everybody else. There's also a chaplain, and they still do have a chaplain who is hired in for members of the House of Representatives. And each one of these roles, they are chosen by the majority party. They get to select whoever they want to hire in these, and they are officers, but they're not, and they're not members of the House. They're not really voted on. They're just hired in by whoever is in control. So the House will then adopt its rules of procedures that they're going to follow for the next term, and they have been developed over the last couple hundred years as they continue to emerge and as they continue to be modified. And there's usually not a whole lot of big changes that happen here, but they all have to agree that we are going to follow a certain rule of order. And this rule book is about 400 pages long as it exists today. So as we move on to the Senate looks much different because it is a continuous body. And so we only have 1/3 of the members who are going to be new members coming in. And so the Senate doesn't have the same sort of organizational issues and training that needs to happen and votes that need to happen on day one. They just kind of keep on moving as normal. So the opening day is usually much shorter than what we have and more routine in the House, even if there's a change in who is in control of the Senate. They do swear in the newly elected or re-elected members, and they begin to fill the committees that have vacancies that need to be taken care of. And so they will administer the oath of office. As I mentioned, they're going to fill in those vacancies on any members that did not get reelected that were on previous committees. And so that way they'll make sure that they can continue moving on with business as usual as quickly as possible. Now, the Constitution does provide for the State of the Union address, and this is a requirement. And so once both chambers have been organized, a joint committee then is appointed, and they're going to instruct the president that they are ready to receive any communication that he wants to provide to them. And so, usually within a few weeks here, the president is going to deliver his message to Congress, and that is known as the State of the Union. The Constitution mentions that it is required that from time to time the Congress he shall give the Congress information on the State of the Union. It does not specify how this has to take place. Not all presidents have come to Congress in order to give this address in person. There's no formal requirement that it has to happen every year. That is just more of tradition. And so many times the president will show up in person, especially in modern day, and this becomes a national event where everybody's watching and waits to hear what the president has to do, has to say, and what he wants to tell Congress that he wants them to accomplish over the next year. This is a very big deal. This is a joint session of Congress, and typically the representatives from the party who are out of power will have a response prepared and ready, and they will then have a televised response that news media is going to cover and is going to share with the American people. And many times they will know a general sense of what the president is going to say. Sometimes they even get a copy of his speech ahead of time so that way they can prepare their response. So once the president finishes his address and attention moves away from the Capitol, then the minority party, the party out of power, will get an opportunity to offer their response. The presiding officers in each one of these houses, we have the Speaker of the House. We've already talked about him to some extent. He is the leader of the majority party. He keeps order. He oversees what's going on in the House. There's no formal requirement for him, for the Speaker of the House, and therefore they can choose just about anybody. Nancy Pelosi was the very first female Speaker of the House, first time elected in 2007. The longest serving Speaker of the House was a man by the name of Sam Rayburn. He served for 17 years. In the Senate, we have the Vice President. He is the President of the Senate, but he really doesn't have a whole lot of power there. And so, therefore, he is more of a figurehead. He really does not have a whole lot of power even to speak on the floor of the Senate. The only way he gets a chance to vote is to break a tie. And so the daily power belongs to the President pro tem. He is elected by the Senate. Many times he is one of the longer serving members of that Senate, and therefore it's a position of honor. Although it does not come with a whole lot of power and prestige, it does mean that he is in line of the succession for the presidency, and so that is an important position for somebody to have. There are a few other floor leaders that are important to talk about besides the Speaker and the President pro tem. We have majority and minority leaders. Of course, the majority leader is going to be elected from the majority party, and same thing for the minority leader from the minority party. You have these people called whips. Their job is to assist the party leaders. They serve as liaisons between the party leaders and party members. And they're the ones that are going to go around and they're going to check for support among the congressmen and women before the votes are held. And that way they can find out how somebody is willing to vote, which direction they're leaning, and whether they need a little bit of encouragement. They will also go out and recruit votes, trying to get support for legislation that will happen. We also have the seniority rule. Typically, those that are the longest serving members get the most important roles. That's not a guarantee, but that's just tradition. And once again, that is some of the things that a few of these newly elected congressmen and women are trying to change, where they see this more as some of the corruption that's going on. Maybe I shouldn't say corruption, but those that are just, they've been there so long that they really have lost sight of their goals. And so there are some advantages for those uh, that do fall into the seniority rule. The Those that have been there the longest are going to have the most experience. They're going to know what is going on and what needs to happen. And if they follow the seniority rule to the fullest, where they just say the longest serving person gets the most important role, it avoids any sort of fighting going on among members who are arguing for their position, and it wastes a lot of time. And so it makes sure that they have an easy way just to apply. Whoever's the longest serving, they get to get the most important. But of course, this is going to look at the criticisms, is going to ignore those that may have higher ability or higher intelligence, or may have a higher level of wisdom, or perhaps they have a better personality to fit that role. And so it depends on the party, and it depends on how they want to execute those things as to whether that's actually enforced. The Republicans in the House of Representatives did limit certain positions. They have a 6-year limit on chairmanships in some of these committees. And so that way they've tried to keep a rotation of people that are involved in those things.